Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start my presentation, I would like to tell you some amazing facts. Internet Lab states estimating that over 4 billion people search the web every day. That's over half of the global population. This estimation in itself is telling of how massive the Internet is. According to statistical research by World Wide websites, the web contains over 6 billion index web pages as of 2020. Among so many web pages, pornography web pages account for 12%. That is to say, there are around 720 million pornographic web pages. Hi, I'm Ivy Huang. What I'm going to present is the negative effects of cyberpornography on underage people. This is the outline of my presentation. It is divided into 3 parts. First, I will elaborate on how cyberpornography leads to an unhealthy relationship. Second, I'm going to talk about exposure to pornography resulting in sex addiction. And finally, I will discuss the 3 solutions to minimize the negative impacts of cyberpornography on underage people. Cyberpornography may lead to unhealthy intimate relationships because it will normalize sexual harm, promote aggression toward women, and shape negative attitudes and behavior towards women. We all know that for adolescents, forming romantic and sexual relationship is a crucial development assignment. However, sexual content on media often sends good, stereotypical, and potentially damaging messages about sexuality. Children and youth are more vulnerable to pornography images than adults because the mirror neurons in the brain convince them that they are experiencing what they see. Mirror neurons play a vital role in learning because most children learning in large by imitation. Underage people will practice whatever they learn from the media in the relationship, violence, and aggression included. First, pornography normalizes sexual harm by presenting a lack of emotional relationship between non-consensual partners, unprotected sexual contact, and even violence and rape. Pornography does not reflect a consensual, loving, healthy relationship. In contrast, it teaches dominance, aggression, disrespect, and objection. To make matters worse, as mentioned earlier, because of mirror neurons, underage people may practice what they learn from pornography in the reality. Second, pornography also promotes aggression toward women. Aggression and violent actions or language in pornography might mislead the youth. After contacting this kind of information, underage people are likely to practice violence and aggression when being in an intimate relationship, because they think what behaves in pornography is sexually acceptable. Third, exposure to sexual incontinence shapes negative attitudes and behavior toward women. Typical sexual script over focus on men's sexual desires and prowess, which strengthen the stereotype that women are sex objects. A survey focusing on high school students from 2001 and to 2004 showed that 76% of boys who are reported committing some form of sexual harassment are also reported to use of sexually explicit media. As a result, people could know that exposure to cyberpornography is harmful to those who are not mature enough physically and mentally. Based on the above 3 instances, contacting pornography does lead to unhealthy intimate relationships. Let's move on to the next point. Exposure to pornography would not only lead to an unhealthy intimate relationship, but also sex addiction, which leads to mental and physical negative impacts. Adolescents are more vulnerable to sexually explicit content due to the significant physical, emotional, cognitive, and sexual change associated with teenage growth. Sex addiction is one of the serious effects of exposure to pornography. The majority of people who come into contact with sexually graphic content are not addicted to it. Addiction occurs only when an individual cannot control their impulse to view porn to the extent that it begins to negatively affect aspects of their life. For the mental aspects, patients with sex addiction are likely to suffer from depression and anxiety. People who are addicted to sex will do whatever they need to satisfy their craving, substance abuse included, which would make the situation more terrible. What's worse, they might become sex offenders. Besides, sex addiction affects not only performance of study, but also every aspect of normal life because patients would fail to control their libido and ignore their job, family, and relationship. If youth with sex addiction don't seek help, they might suffer from it for a long time and even ruin their future. On the other hand, sex addiction also leads to some physical problems. One of the most common symptoms would be erectile dysfunction, and this kind of problem often happens amongst men. Overuse of pornography would make desensitized sexual response. A man watching sexually explicit media too often needs more stimulation than normal people. To obtain the same desired effect, he must increase sexual activity. Some sex addiction patients may take drastic measures to meet their needs, such as engaging in sex with multiple partners. If people cannot ensure that they could practice safe sex behavior, sex addiction could also lead to sexually transmitted disease like chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. Fortunately, most of them could be cured or even gradually clear up on their own. There are still some concrete ways to involve the cooperation of family, school education, and pornography suppliers to turn the situation around, even if the exposure to cyberpornography is hard to avoid. First, family education. Family is the first and most direct learning channel for children, so parental influence on the development of underage people is quite crucial. Underage people are unfamiliar with sex, so they might be misled by the content of pornography. Parents should be encouraged to be more open to discuss things about sex with their children. Nonetheless, if the sex knowledge of underage people only comes from their parents, the kind of situation might be dangerous, because their knowledge comes from their experiences, which might be wrong. As a result, underage people also need school education to have a better understanding of sex. Many educators believe that pornography should be addressed in sex education classes and that educating about the dangers of online pornography should be emphasized. Through school education lectured by well-trained teachers, students could have correct knowledge about sex and know how a healthy intimate relationship functions. Finally, the problem caused by online pornography could be solved by the suppliers of cyberpornography. Because users in cyberspace are anonymous, it is quite difficult to discriminate based on age. The youth could just click the button like, yes, I'm over 18, or yes, I am an adult, and quickly enter the adult-oriented websites. Luckily, service with names like AdultCheck and PornoPlus now provides adult identification numbers to individual Internet users for a non-one-time fee of $9.95 charged to a credit card. The number then serves as a key that provides easy access to all the Internet sites that put up the gates required by communication decency Act. Instead of a warning button, a identification number makes the channels of pornography much more difficult to obtain, so most underage people might give up on the idea of browsing adult-oriented websites. This slide is a brief summary of what I've talked about. Because of the libido or curiosity, people will search for adult-oriented websites and view pornography, which is a normal thing for people. Nonetheless, underage people's exposure to pornography brings some substantial harms, including unhealthy intimate relationship and sex addiction, which involves mental and physical negative impacts. Also, underage people's exposure to cyberpornography is inevitable. There are still some ways to ease the seriousness of the matter. Through the joint effort from family, school, and pornography suppliers, the negative effect caused by the prevalence of pornography could be minimal. These are my works cited pages. That's all for my presentation. Thank you for your attention.